Hi, everybody. Vicky Sandville here with LG, with Integrator Insights, and our issue of the public address for the fall. I'm super excited to have a special guest. Normally, we have channel partners or an end user, but today we have Dan Goldstein, who's the Chief Marketing Officer of AVIXA. And we're basically just going to have a nice little conversation about the design of space, the future of space, and kind of what's going on in the industry. So Dan, welcome to Integrator Insights.
Thank you, Vicky. It's great. It's great to be here. I feel very privileged to have been invited, and also to be described as a special guest. That's I think that's a first for me. So maybe the first of many. Who knows?
Well, it's really interesting. AVIXA makes such a strong impact on the community. And so I think the audience today is going to learn a lot from you throughout our discussion. So I'd love to kind of get your take on what AVIXA and what you're seeing as you and your partners and your members go out in the communities and talk about how you design technology in spaces like K through 12 and higher education.
Yeah. So I definitely think there are some trends that we can talk about. And what's interesting to me, and I know this is a terrible cliche, but I think the pandemic accelerated certain trends that were already there, that were already in place. So for example, the notion of hybrid learning, the notion of people sometimes being on campus, but sometimes learning remotely, the notion of learning content being consumable everywhere, consumable from your smartphone, from your tablet, on the move, not even at home, but somewhere completely different. Having that agility and that ability, particularly I think in higher education, to provide a valuable learning experience to people wherever they may be and whatever they may be doing, that was all happening, pre-pandemic, right? So many universities found that to be we're finding that to be a very, very good way of broadening their audience, diversifying revenue, growing adoption of their learning programs. But to go back to your earlier question about spaces and how they're evolving, I think one of the things that we clearly see is the need for agility, the need for spaces to be flexible.
What are your thoughts on kind of, the trend of the industry there in terms of interoperability? Do you think that we're making great strides to make sure that we are ready to support and arm the end users in their design, or is more education needed, in terms of the campus design teams and the channel partners actually that are going after and doing a lot of the work?
Yeah, it's so interesting, this one, Vicky, because in answer to your question about is there more education needed, yes, I think so. I don't know whether it's formal education though, as much as it's brands continuing to work together to showcase, to demonstrate the fact that they have these partnerships, and that there is a level of interoperability now between different kinds of hardware, and different kinds of software, that there's interoperability between devices on a network, that there's file sharing, and there's two-way communication with things like CRMs, as well as LMSs and those sorts of software tools that allow for things like storage of transcripts and progress towards certifications and credentials and those sorts of things. What's interesting to me is that holistic approach, is the fact that they're looking at it as a complete solution, not as, oh, here's who you should use for your audio, and here's who you should use for your displays, and those two companies not actually talking to each other in any meaningful way. I think we've got a bit of a way to go, though. I mean, I think there are still technology barriers on interoperability, but there are a lot fewer than there were.
It's great that we're, as a community, educating each other because it's just going to get more complicated. Speaking of that, with interoperability, just trying, we're tackling that. A new trend that I'm seeing, an unfortunate trend, but that I'm seeing in the higher education space and education overall is security and like cybersecurity. What are your thoughts on, have you seen some sort of technology trends in that are, conducive to meeting the needs of what the higher ed community is asking for from our industry?
It's one of those things, I think, where you're, in a way, it seems to me like we're always playing catch up here. The hackers and the thieves and the people who will potentially damage the robustness and the security and the privacy of our systems they're always going to be kind of one step ahead, and I think that's just kind of the way it is. I think this is a new thing for a lot of people in AV and digital signage, and I think it's one of the areas where I think we could learn a lot from our colleagues in IT. And when you're in, as we know, a lot of education establishments now have kind of put things like multimedia and presentation and event production and so forth under IT. That's how one could look at it kind of organizationally. But I think a more helpful way of looking at it is not so much working for IT, it's working with IT and establishing a culture inside the institution that no pun intended, that's about learning, where we learn from each other.
So I attended Infocom 2022. Public sector is a very interesting business. We have all these specialized IT and AV shows around the country. And so we don't get a lot of audience at Infocom, but I went, and what I found the most surprising was the increased attendance of higher education, audiovisual, and IT decision makers. So can you tell me if you experienced the same thing? I mean, I could not sit down.
Yeah, no, it's been one of our strongest suits, for a while, Vicky, but we did do very well with it this year, and I honestly, I find it hard to kind of put my finger on it. There's something to be said about the timing of the show, in the sense that you're coming towards the end of the academic year. I think that the market for technology and education is in very good shape. We have a lot of market research data that points to it as having been one of the more resilient markets through the pandemic. Unlike retail and hospitality, unlike live events, unlike performance and entertainment, it stayed, and that's actually an echo of the last recession. Back at the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, education was very resilient at that time as well, if memory serves me correctly. So I think there's that. There's the fact that it's been relatively little affected by the pandemic, just from a kind of a budget and from a kind of a technology planning point of view. And then I think the other side to it, like I say, is just timing. We're just at the right time for people to start having those conversations.
So I guess last question is, I mean, since we have you here, is can you give us any preview of the vision for Infocom 2023, and maybe how higher education, the higher education community will find some benefits next year?
Yeah, I think from a high level, I think you'll see a lot of innovation next year, and attendance. And so I think we're working on a couple of new things for the show floor, a couple of activations there that I think are going to be very interesting. We're also going to be developing two other things that I would mention. Number one is we're definitely looking at new areas of content off the show floor. So the education program that takes place in the classrooms and meeting rooms, different ways for people to network with each other. We're definitely looking at that, maybe in a slightly more structured way than we've done in the past. And then I think the other thing that we want to do is, we did actually do in an incremental way, a fairly small scale way, some new things this year that we want to develop. So for example, we were doing show floor tours based on solutions. So a digital signage show floor tour, or a collaboration show floor tour, because we have pavilions for those things, but then we also have companies like LG, for example, who are, because your solution, your technologies encompass a wide range of solutions, you just want to be slap bang in the middle of the show floor. So that's where you'll be. So doing some of that curation for people and helping, it's a big show. And if you're new to the show, or even if you're not, it can be, difficult to navigate. So we're going to do more of those. And we also want to do more of something else new that we did this year, which was our market insights lunches, which were, we did a generic Pro AV one, and then we did another one for digital signage. And they went better than I could have hoped for. So, the idea that people would actually just work through their lunch and pay us for the privilege, I found to be pretty incredible, actually. But it was because the content was so valuable, and so I want to do more of that, find more ways in which we can share the data that we're creating and curating about industry trends, and so we want to probably extend that program and develop it further. So a development of a few new things that we did this year, definitely some show floor features that are going to be new and hopefully really inspiring, and also I think that networking piece, bringing people together in new ways, in an intentional way. Those are the things that I think we're looking at.
I mean, this is so insightful. So, Dan, I really appreciate you taking the time today on LG Integrator Insights. And I look forward to talking again. So thanks so much, and have a good day.
Thank you, and have a great one.